First of all, Haiti was awesome. It was an amazing experience. That said, it can really mess with a guy. In my journal, we all had journals, in my journal on day 4, I wrote, "Last night, I was afraid to go home. In church today, all of a sudden, I wanted to go back." On day 6, my journal reads, "I do not want to go home." To be conflicted is only human, and humanity was put in plain sight in Haiti. For one thing, the people of Haiti are humble. They are truly humble. That is probably the most astonishing thing that I saw there. Not the lack of traffic laws, not the extreme poverty, but the people there were so genuine and so amazing. It was shocking. On our first bus ride off the airplane to the school that we stayed at, I sat next to one of our guys, Jonas. Jonas is 21 years old and speaks 6 languages. We had quite the time trying to have a conversation through the noisy streets of Port-au-Prince. And the Haitians are very direct people. After about 10 minutes of talking to Jonas, he asked me, "So have you accepted Jesus into your life?" I was a little surprised because in America, you usually don't say that to somebody after you just got to know them. But I said yes, I have, or at least I'm trying to, and he seemed satisfied with that. The next day, after a long day at work, he asked me about how I was doing, and I told him I was doing really well and that it felt good to have a purpose. More on that later. After we talked for a little bit longer, he said, "I think you and I are going to be friends forever." That was an amazing thing to hear after only knowing somebody for 2 days. One of the other amazing things about Haiti was that the worship was entirely about God. Because worship should be entirely about God. And there were no Western distractions in Haiti. There were no watches, no schedules, no planning, no school day, no work day. Just working on helping others and worshiping God. And that was the most genuine religion I've experienced. I think that a lot of the reasons for this are just being on a more relaxed schedule, the face-to-face conversation that was evident there, and the radical change of environment that allowed us to feel radical change within ourselves, and being tired. There's no greater joy than to work for a purpose. Working for a purpose is what life is all about, I feel. On our first day of work, one of the people from this church who's been there before, Taylor Daly, said, "Everyone has their niche." And she told that to me after she'd asked me how I was doing, and I said, good. I like doing the manual labor. Playing with the kids makes me a little uncomfortable, but I like doing the work. And then on the bus ride home that day, as I mentioned, Jonas asked me, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing good. It feels so good to work with a purpose." Because at home, I go to school and I go to the YMCA and I work, but what is it for? And in Haiti, it was for a purpose. It was for the highest purpose, which is to serve others. One of my friends, Paul Luis, has a quote: "There is no higher, the highest human aspiration is a life of a service." And when we have found our purpose, and when we work for our purpose, it lets us see God more fully. The owner of the orphanage that we went to in Haiti said, "The more you encounter with the Spirit, the more evident your purpose becomes." If you don't feel joy when you do work, then it's probably not your purpose. And this joy was very evident in our Haitian friends. I don't find it to be as evident here. I think that a lot of the times in America, we get distracted by a lot of different things. And we let ourselves lose sight of what life is really all about. And one of the greatest things about the Haitians being joyful is that it kind of backs up something I've been thinking about for a while. And that is that joy and pain are really pretty much the same thing. They're very similar, at least. It's just like how love and hate are almost the same thing. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy. If you hate somebody, you still care about them. You still think about them. You're still devoting yourself to that person, albeit in a negative way. It is the same thing with joy and suffering. Suffering only leads to joy. It's just like the opposite, the negative version of joy. And suburban life, this little bubble that we live in, is full of apathy. And it's the true opposite of the joy and the suffering that I saw in Haiti. So some of the things that I'm hoping to take back from Haiti are the resilience and the laughter of the people, the feeling of purpose, and the true worship. There are a couple of other unforgettable moments in Haiti that I'd like to talk about. On our last day of work, I gave one of the Haitian workers at the work site a pair of my gloves. I looked into his eyes and saw true thankfulness, which was an amazing thing. In the States, we underestimate eye contact a lot, and we underestimate giving a lot. And that was the opposite of both of them. Another moment was playing frisbee golf after a long day of work. And one of my friends accidentally knocked down one of the trash cans that we were using as a goal, and it shattered, and it was hilarious. We laughed ourselves absolutely silly. It was awesome. And taking a break from work, which breaks were pretty frequent, I sat at the soccer field, and one of the Haitian kids came up to me and put his hand on the back of my neck. And I had this awesome feeling on the inside. I wouldn't say it's a warmth, but I would say it's kind of an energy. And I think that was the Spirit of God, and it's something that I hope I never forget. Lastly, playing basketball at the orphanage. I think that sports are kind of an international language. There's no distinction made between people when they're doing things like sports or music or anything like that. It's an international language that breaks down cultural barriers, and playing basketball was a way that I got to know the Haitian kids better. I think that the biggest impact that Haiti has had on me, if you can't already tell, is that it has made me question, what is the purpose of life back here? What are we doing? Is what we do with our time, is how we work, is that selfish? Because if we are not fulfilling our higher purpose, and if we are not fulfilling the need to see God, is all of our work futile and selfish? I don't know. It's something that I've been forced to question, and I hope it's something that you think about too. I mean, what is the point of being productive if you don't take time to laugh? If you don't take time to feel as though you are living? Anyway, I think that the whole point of mission trips like Haiti is to take us out of our comfort zones so that we can have a more full vision of God and a more true vision of God. And I would like to thank you, the congregation, for supporting me and helping send our youth ministries to countries like that and let us have experiences. Thank you.
Let's take a moment to pray for Spencer here.